My fellow Nigerians, as your future president, I want to share my thoughts today on President Donald Trump's amazing comeback and yes, landslide victory in the 2024 US presidential election and its implications for Nigeria, Africa, and the world. Indeed, Trump not only won the Electoral College, but also the popular vote, the very first time a Republican has done so in 20 years. But first, let me tell you my Donald Trump story. I've been a Trump supporter since 2015. On August 11, 2015, more than a year before the 2016 US presidential election, a friend asked me on Facebook if I thought Trump could become the Republican presidential candidate. My response was, for all I care, Trump can end up winning the November 2016 election. My friend laughed and said it would be a big surprise if Trump ran against Hillary Clinton. I responded, Trump will defeat anybody the Democrats throw up. He has energized not only the Republican conservative base, but also many independents. Then in 2020, with COVID as a pretext, Democrats changed voting rules and used massive numbers of mail-in ballots to rig the election against Trump in the swing states. It's the truth, but it's past. So let's move on. But before we move on, let me take this opportunity to address those who mocked me back in 2020 for sharing a prophecy from Kim Clement on Facebook that President Trump was going to serve 2 terms as US president. I did so to encourage my Christian friends who were worried after Biden was announced as the winner of the 2020 election. Now, if you're one of those people, the next time you see a post about something you don't entirely understand or believe in, just move on. You don't have to react to everything on social media. That prophecy from Kim Clement, a respected prophet, which was given several years before Trump even announced he would run for president, was very clear that Trump would serve 2 terms. He didn't say, however, that they must be 2 consecutive terms. I believed in the prophecy because I sensed in my spirit that God indeed chose Trump for a special purpose for America and the world. It's the same way I believe that God spared Trump's life during the July 13 assassination attempt precisely because God plans to use him during his second term. It's the same way I know I will be president of Nigeria in the future. My point, never ever write off a man who is chosen or called by God. Now, unlike Bill and Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, and Joe Biden, who became extremely wealthy after their years in office, Trump instead lost money by becoming president. He didn't even take the salary in his first term. Sadly, though, the Democrats and their media friends demonized Trump, his family, his businesses, all to force him out of power. First, they lied that he colluded with Russia to win in 2016. Then they impeached him for investigating Biden's actual corruption in Ukraine. Then they staged the January 6, 2021 US Capitol incident and blamed him and impeached him for it. They've also tried to jail him on politically motivated Trump-up charges. Lately, their hateful rhetoric against Trump has led to 2 assassination attempts on his life, including the first attempt I mentioned earlier, where the bullet missed him by mere inches because God miraculously turned his head a split second prior to the bullet flying by. And by the way, Trump's instinctual courage immediately after that assassination attempt was out of this world. That image of him raising his clenched fist while surrounded by Secret Service agents and shouting, "Fight, fight, fight," will forever remain one of world history's most amazing political symbols of courage. That said, while Trump's great courage, persistence, and perseverance in the face of political persecution and a wannabe assassin's bullets inspired multitudes and helped him win their votes, he won in 2024 primarily because his record in office and policy simply made much sense to more Americans, especially when contrasted with the terrible Biden-Harris record, particularly on the economy and immigration. Simply put, Trump did very well in his first term, domestically and internationally. Domestically, in October 2016, a month before that election, Trump promised 4% economic growth. CNN reported on it, claiming economists say no way. The Hill, another major US news outlet, reacted to Trump's growth promise with a headline saying Trump's growth projections leave economists in disbelief. But in July 2018, the same CNN reported that the US economy grew at an annual rate of 4.1% for the second quarter of the year, the fastest pace in almost 4 years. Indeed, a few months after Trump took office in May 2017, the Wall Street Journal had a headline, "Trump's 3% growth target looks out of reach." Fast forward to October 2017, and the Washington Post reported that the US economy grew at a 3% rate, a win for Trump. So yes, before COVID, Trump's policies indeed grew the US economy. Also, Trump notably reduced taxes for Americans, not just the big corporations as the Democrats and their media friends have frequently claimed. Indeed, 91% of middle-income Americans received tax cuts in 2018 as a result of Trump's landmark Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. The legislation, which passed in 2017, remains the biggest corporate tax cut in U.S. history, cutting taxes from 35%, which was one of the highest in the world at the time, to 21%. When CNN asked independent but pro-Democrat U.S. Senator Bernie Sanders in December 2017 whether it wasn't a good thing that middle-income Americans had benefited immensely from those tax cuts, he replied, "Yeah, it is a great thing." Oh my God. Also, Trump notably reduced taxes for Americans, not just the big corporations as the Democrats and their media friends have frequently claimed. Indeed, 91% of middle-income Americans received tax cuts in 2018 as a result of Trump's landmark Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. The legislation, which passed in 2017, remains the biggest corporate tax cut in U.S. history, cutting taxes from a whopping 35%, which was one of the highest in the world at the time, to 21%. When CNN asked independent but pro-Democrat U.S. Senator Bernie Sanders in December 2017 whether it wasn't a good thing that middle-income Americans had benefited immensely from the tax cuts, he responded, "Yeah, it is a very good thing, and that's why we should have made the tax cuts for the middle class permanent." Now, apart from tax cuts, Trump had strong border control policies like Remain in Mexico, which helped to greatly reduce illegal immigration with all its attendant ills. Also, illegal crossings plummeted by about 87% in areas where Trump's border wall was built. What's more, many Black and Latino Americans, in other words, minorities, who have for one reason or the other been incarcerated or jailed disproportionately or more frequently, have realized that while Biden as a senator was a key player in the laws that led to those higher imprisonment rates for minorities, President Trump in his first term implemented much needed prison reform to address those issues. In addition, Trump significantly increased funding for historically Black and Hispanic colleges and universities to provide more higher educational opportunities for minorities. Furthermore, under Trump, Black and Latino unemployment reached their lowest levels in American history. And coupled with the economic benefits of Trump's tax cuts, juxtaposed with the high inflation seen under Biden and Harris, you can now understand why many more Black and African Americans and Latino Americans voted for Trump in 2024. How could Trump be a racist when he cared and cares about minorities, as these facts so clearly show? No doubt he carried 41% of the Hispanic vote and 15% of the Black vote, up from 8% in 2020, including 25% of Black males, something that is unheard of for a Republican presidential candidate. On the other hand, internationally, Trump became the first American president in a very long time to not start a new war. He is fundamentally opposed to the endless wars and interventionism that America's military-industrial complex and their political and media puppets have long been known for. For all his characteristic tough talk, President Trump is at his core a man of peace. Trump was the first U.S. president in history to meet and hold peace talks with the leader of North Korea, arguably America's biggest enemy. Those efforts helped to reduce tensions between North and South Korea, which before Trump took office were at historic levels. In fact, before leaving office in January 2017, Obama left a note telling Trump that he considered North Korea the biggest threat to world peace at the time. President Trump's man of peace credentials were also why he successfully negotiated the Abraham Accords, the first peace agreement between Israel and some Arab states in decades. Ultimately, Trump's America First foreign policy is exactly how foreign policy ought to be conducted. Leaders must always prioritize their country's national interests, period. It was precisely because of the need to prioritize America's interests that Trump renegotiated the North American Free Trade Area NAFTA trade deal into the US-Mexico-Canada Agreement, USMCA. The USMCA, which gave American companies more access to those markets than before and therefore more jobs for Americans, went into effect in July 2020. Trump signed similar new trade deals with South Korea in 2018, Japan in 2019, and China, at least the first phase of the deal, in January 2020. And by the way, speaking of the USMCA, it is a reminder that Trump will be the sitting president at the time those three countries will jointly host the FIFA World Cup in 2026. I believe Trump, who has a great sense of ceremony, will build on the spirit of cooperation behind the USMCA to, working with FIFA, ensure a very successful first ever triple host World Cup. As he will also be the sitting president at the time of the Los Angeles 2028 Summer Olympic Games, I know he will ensure that the organizers and the host city officials have all the support they need to deliver a memorable event. What are the other implications for the world of President Trump's victory in the 2024 US presidential election? First, Trump has promised and surely will quickly find a way to bring the Russia-Ukraine war to an end. This is a very big deal because that war has clearly been on the path to escalation, the kind of escalation that could eventually lead to World War III. Second, just like in his first term when President Trump negotiated the Abraham Accords between Israel and some Arab states, I'm sure he will similarly find a way to negotiate a ceasefire between Israel and the Palestinians following more than a year of attacks on both sides that were provoked by the October 2023 terrorist attacks in Israel. President Trump will also try to get President Xi of China to agree to a deal aimed at reducing the US's trade deficit with China. Depending on President Xi's response, President Trump may impose significant tariffs on China, which will affect the rest of the world one way or the other, given that China is the world's factory. For Africa, we can expect a reversal of Biden's policy of conditioning tariff-free access to the US market for African agricultural products under the African Growth and Opportunity Act AGOA on adherence to their woke LGBTQ agenda. That's the same agenda that allows men in women's sports and boys in girls' bathrooms, which Trump is totally against. For Nigeria, I hope that President Trump will review and reverse Biden's decision to not release the FBI files that would have exposed Tinubu's drug dealings in the US. It is possible that Trump, who in his first term was reportedly very critical of the embarrassingly poor leadership in Africa and who is very tough against drugs, could release those files. Such a release will definitely further frustrate Tinubu's chances in the 2027 presidential election. It is also my hope that the fact that Trump is no fan of multilateral organizations, including the World Bank and the IMF, means a World Bank and IMF puppet like Tinubu will probably be under less American government pressure to follow their dictates. That's quite important because it's by following those dictates to devalue the Naira that Tinubu got us the historic levels of inflation we're currently experiencing. Beyond Trump likely reversing Biden's woke LGBTQ requirements for AGOA participation and so on, his great comeback victory, despite all the odds, will further highlight the need for effective democracy in Africa. A few weeks ago, Elon Musk, one of the smartest and most accomplished humans ever, said, if Trump doesn't win, this is the last election, meaning in the US. Musk was right. In the US, the Democrats and their friends in the media, notably propaganda outlets like CNN, MSNBC, the New York Times, the Washington Post, and so on, have sought to stifle free speech in the name of fighting misinformation or disinformation, which is for the most part information they don't like. On the other hand, Democrats have opposed voter ID and proof of citizenship requirements for voters while allowing millions of illegal immigrants into the US yearly. When you connect the dots, you will realize that what the Democrats really want is a one-party state where they'll be in power perpetually and enact their evil agenda without really ever having to worry about being held accountable by voters. That's why Trump has been such a threat to them, and it's why they hate him so much. Fellow Nigerians, to conclude, I must give God all the glory for President Donald Trump's great comeback victory. Yes, God is very involved in the affairs of men, and yes, God ordained Trump to be US president for 2 terms. As I said earlier, only God could have turned Trump's head a split second before that bullet whizzed past him, barely touching his ear. Only God can put the kind of courage and fortitude in a man that Trump has so greatly exemplified despite all the odds. As Trump said in his last campaign speech, I hope God did put me here to save this country. Oh yes, he did. I must also thank the American patriots and millions of Trump supporters, including many Democrats and independents who waited in line on election day to cast their ballots or voted early for Trump. May God bless President and President-elect Donald Trump and Vice President-elect James Vance, who, by the way, will be in office in 2026 when America will celebrate the 250th anniversary of its independence. Cool, right? Now, thanks for watching, everybody. May God bless you. May God bless the United States of America, and may God bless the Federal Republic of Nigeria.